And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Aaron McIntyre and Todd and I'm Steve Deace, brought to you by our friends over at Jace Medical. Their Jace case is an essential tool in your toolkit to make sure you're prepared. You have peace of mind. That reminds me, my Jace case is expired. I got to upgrade mine. So Jace, call me. Anyway, make sure you've got a backup of some of the most important antibiotics ever found in the history of humanity, just in case those are the next ones that when you need them the most, they suddenly decide they're horse dewormers and dangerous and not for human consumption, because we've got a failed cancer drug with a black box warning that we want to give you to cause renal failure instead. That literally happened. I made nothing up. I just said. Didn't even embellish it. That literally happened. And just recently. I made nothing up. Didn't even do anything tongue-in-cheek. Didn't euphemize anything for effect. Exaggerated nothing. Everything I just said literally occurred. So make sure you're ready. All right, go to jace.com. JASE is where you can go. Jace.com. You can enter their giveaway there, by the way, for a free Jace case. See if you can win one. Or you can purchase one and get a discount when you use my last name, Deace, at checkout. Discount code Deace at jace.com. Now you can expand your Jace case as well to customizable options like the aforementioned ivermectin, if you'd like to do that. Like EpiPens, which I'm going to need with summer gearing up here. And yet another WASP invasion where I will risk my life for America doing this show from this facility looming. Jace.com. JASE is where you can go. Promo code Deace at discount for a discount at checkout for your order. Jace.com. Promo code Deace. All right, that'll do it for Jace. Here's what's coming up on the show today. We're going to start buy, sell, or hold. Was there a crash over there, Aaron? You all right?
I was just gearing up for a bit because I know what you're about to say, and I totally screwed up and panicked.
I just heard a loud crash. Todd, did you hear that?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's a bit that I just thought of. I didn't tell you about because I know what you're about to say, and I totally ruined it.
All right. Coming up on the show today, at the bottom of the hour, buy, sell, or hold. People are like, you're ending the show already. There was a loud crash. I didn't know what was going on. Are we dead? What happened? All right.
We signed the contract, Blaze. You can't take it back.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's the bit. We signed a new contract.
Yes.
New sponsor as well, American Beverage Association. That's the bit.
Yes. Every week, because we make you drink. Yes. Aaron apparently has been drinking.
We're drunk right now.
Yes.
No, that was who was behind the influencer campaign over the weekend.
Oh, that's who did that with the Save Coke?
I think so, yeah.
Save the sodas? Okay. But we'll start buy, sell, or hold here at the bottom of the hour. We'll be joined by the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, next hour. Aaron is correct. We do have some personal and professional news, and we'll say it to you now because you guys are really who to thank for this. But we just finalized a 3-year contract extension with the Blaze. And I know what you're thinking. I mean, I'm every bit as surprised they fell for it again as you are. But nevertheless, we will be here for another few years at the very least. Here on Blaze TV, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck. And so the partnership, maybe even at times friendship here continues. So thank you in all seriousness. Thank you guys and your ongoing support of the show, because without you, this would not have happened, obviously. So thank you guys very much. We greatly appreciate that. And each and every one of you, because let's face it, we don't always make it easy to like this show. And that's not even tongue-in-cheek, because when you are relentless about pursuing truth, you'll end up in places where maybe you don't even want to be, and you don't like yourself being stuck in, let alone you guys on the receiving end listening to it and watching it. But somehow we have managed to capture enough of an audience that the Blaze thinks it's worthy to continue it. So thank you guys very much for the next 3 years here at the Blaze. Without you, it would literally not be possible. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. And with that, now I think Aaron is ready for his rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by RFK Jr. chimes in. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. addressed the reaction to Trump's pick to lead the CDC, Dr. Susan Manara, saying in a post yesterday, quote, X posts that erroneously attribute Biden-era tweets supporting masks, lockdowns, vaccine mandates, etc. to my CDC director nominee Susan Manara have understandably provoked agitation within the MAHA movement. I handpicked Susan for this job because she's a longtime champion of MAHA values and a caring, compassionate, and brilliant microbiologist and a tech wizard who will reorient CDC toward public health and gold standard science. I'm so grateful to President Trump for making this appointment. That's quite the endorsement, and I pray he's right about Dr. Manara. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya was confirmed as director of the National Institutes of Health yesterday. That's a big job, and it follows Marty Makary, who was confirmed as head of the FDA earlier this week. Trump signed an executive order yesterday aimed at strengthening election integrity. It conditions federal election-related funds on states complying with the integrity measures set forth by federal law and directs the Attorney General to enter into information-sharing agreements with state election officials to identify cases of election fraud or other election law violations, among other measures. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee had his confirmation hearing for ambassador to Israel yesterday.
I cannot imagine under any circumstances that any right-minded person would find it acceptable to support or to even acknowledge that there was justification in any way for the massacre of innocent civilians on October the 7th.
Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett has some thoughts about Governor Greg Abbott.
We in these hot-ass Texas streets, honey. Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now.
Learning Chinese today. Today's phrase is, that's leading Democratic presidential nominee Jasmine Crockett to you, bub.
这就是民主党总统候选人 Jasmine Crockett 向你走来的原因，兄弟。
Illinois Governor Augustus Gloop, your thoughts.
My mother was an activist for reproductive rights and LGBTQ rights. And she took me to pride parades back when, well, they weren't really parades, they were protests. So I have to laugh when I hear the right wing carry on about the dangers of exposing kids to trans people or same-sex couples, because I'm living proof that introducing your kids to the gay agenda might result in them growing up to be governor.
And finally, a Marxist Madness update, Soviet 16 edition. There are some tight matchups, particularly on the right side of the bracket. The one seed in the equity region, Garbage, is lagging behind upset-minded We Demand Aid, 52-48. Also in the equity region, it's a near tie between the 7 seed National Cathedral Witch and the 6 seed High Tech Trafficking, with the Witch barely eking out a lead. Also a near tie in the inclusion region, as the 3 seed Trans Uterus holds a slim lead over the 2 seed Haitians Over Sun. One notable result coming in from the diversity region, where the 8th seeded Rights Come From Where continues its improbable run, leading Governor Weirdmer 60-40. You have less than a day to vote for whom you want to move on from the Soviet 16 to the elitist 8. Make your picks at Steve Deace Show on X. And that's what happened while we were away.
Bit of a surprise. Not that Rights Come From Where, particularly with our audience, is winning. But that Weirdmer clip, I mean, that's a rout right now, given the potency of both of those clips and the crossover appeal that the Widmer clip has, because that's not just going to be considered sacrilege by people who take, the philosophy and ideologies we're debating seriously, but given the visual imagery there, that's got instant viral ability as well. And we saw that when that clip came out last year. But this is a rout.
That's why you play the games, though, in Marxist Madness.
That's why you've got to play the games. You're correct. All right. Folks, Aaron's Montage brought to you by friends over at Preborn. Thank you so much for your ongoing generosity to Preborn. and your tax-deductible gift has created so many success stories, like Paige found out she was pregnant, didn't think she could afford a child. The father, in fact, threatened her with hey, you've got to have an abortion or else. And then she went to a Preborn clinic. And she was given the support and resources she needed to help her choose life. The father even started attending now the parenting classes with her. Now they're raising a beautiful son together. And this all came because somebody here, in the sound of my voice or connected to the Blaze, made a tax-deductible donation of $28 to just fund one ultrasound. So thank you guys so much. Let's keep it going. That's not all they do there. That's a big part of what they do. But they also understand that's just the first step, right? And so if a mom's going to say no to the darkness and go into the light and choose life, then she needs support in many cases. And they're there with that too. Prenatal, postnatal, sometimes up to 2 years after the baby is born. All of that is free of cost as well, even though none of it is actually free. And that's where we come in. And you guys have come in strong. Let's keep it going. Make your tax-deductible donation today. Dial pound 250. Say the keyword baby on your mobile phone. Pound 250, keyword baby on your mobile phone. Or go to preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve. I want to talk about what it means to be in a coalition, Aaron, in response to your montage today. Because the top two items in your montage, I think, speak to where we are, those of us that have a biblical worldview or are interested in seeking that out, and then where we are within the wholeness of the right. Because again, we are a faction of a faction of a faction. Okay? And so because of the era we're in, we have to understand how coalitions operate. And every generation has unique challenges to it. And this is something that our generation is going to have to uniquely understand. The Gen Xers, the millennials, and we'll see. Gen Z, you might be a transformational generation. We shall see. And there are some positive trends where that is concerned, but it's a little too early to make that call yet. Especially given the state of the church. Is the church in place to marinate this moment, so it can not just be a moment, but a mustard seed to a long-term movement? And that's a big focus of our show, is to that end, do what we can. And so that's why we have been listing our show in the religion and spirituality category, mainly on iTunes. If you go look at what's trending in the religion spirituality category right now, there's some good stuff. There's a lot of good Bible study stuff. I don't know if you guys looked at the list I sent you, some of the shows. I've never even heard of many of these things. And several of them are things like, I don't know that I want to hear of them. And those shows may not want me to hear of them, if you know what I'm saying. It might not be good for them if I did, okay? Because the reactions would be bad. So there was not a lot of applied biblical worldview shows in the religion and spirituality category. Did you guys notice that? Wasn't a lot of those. And that is, frankly, right now, what America needs now more than ever is that. People who claim to have this belief system to apply it. People who claim to have this worldview to apply it. The country needs more of that now than anything else. That. And so if you guys if you've not yet put in a 5-star review for us, if you want to do that now, we're trying to get as much notice in that category as possible, because if you look at, there's some good shows in there. But there's just not a lot of what we do. And what we do, frankly, was this was called Sunday sermons, guys, for like the first 200 years in America. And this idea that you would preach separate from what was going on in the culture and teach the Bible like it was an abstract construct that never actually intersected with one's daily events or community controversies just didn't exist. It's really never existed, actually. I mean, why do you think that why do you think we had martyrs? They just built mega churches, well, they called them monasteries, out there in the exurbs. Hey, we're going to keep to ourselves. Just going to copy Bibles here. Just going to ponder the philosophical ramifications of what this all means. We're just going to preach Jesus. That's all we're going to do. We're not going to interpose on anything happening. No claim of dominion. You have at it. And Nero and Domitian and Diocletian and Claudius, and they were like, that's a splendid deal. Swell. You do you. No, it's actually the church did none of that, and that's why they got killed a lot. The cool thing was, though, in the midst of getting killed a lot, they made a huge impact. And it's the people who caused friction. They're always the ones that were responsible for the most change. And we have spent a generation now trying to avoid friction. Run from it, in fact. Flee it. And then when someone comes along who causes it, to then point at that person and castigate them. And make sure that the people you're supposed to cause friction with know that you're not like those people. You're not one of them. There's a lot of those kinds of shows in that religion and spirituality category too. And so if we can't get the people who supposedly know this and believe it to live it, then there's no hope for the broader culture at that point. And so if you guys could go there, leave us a 5-star review, as we're trying to pop in that category, see if we can draw some of those people that maybe have been going to some of those soft-headed churches and listening to those Nicer Than God podcasts, maybe because you guys helped us pop in that category, they accidentally click on us. And then it's our job at that point to see if we can hold on to them, keep them here, okay? So one of the things we have to understand, because of the era we're in, right? You have to live in the era you're in. Doesn't mean, by the way, you have to accept the paradigm of the era you're in. You don't have to do that. Again, I mean, history's not made by those who just accepted every godless paradigm, but by those who did not. But you have to understand, if that paradigm is there, then why? Why? What's that stronghold that I want to confront or I want to tear down? What's unique about the signs of the times in which I live, right? So the previous generation, boomers, lost generationers, greatest generationers, they were the last of the silent majority. And so they were there and we're getting to the tail end of the boomer era now. And so you're seeing now that the mask is off on all these institutions. And the greatest generation said, we saved those institutions, so they're ours. And the silent, I said lost generation, I meant silent generation. The silent generation just kind of coasted off of that. And then the boomer generation was like, here comes the counterculture, the summer of love, Haight-Ashbury. We're going to challenge every single norm. And on the tail end, it's funny. The front end, the alpha of the boomer generation, created every trend line that is screwing the country right now. Has all of its origins in that generation. And yet, and now on the tail end of that generation, there's a remnant that has risen up that's like, oh crap, we got to fix this. Right? And so they're actively trying to fix this as kind of their generational last stand before their time on this third rock from the sun comes to an end. There's probably people in this audience who started off wishing they were at Woodstock when they were kids and now lamenting that Woodstock ever took place. I mean, I think that's probably a familiar tale for right of center boomers. Fair?
Probably, yeah.
Probably. So that paradigm is dying. We're not a silent majority anymore. And so we're going to have to learn to operate in a coalition. We're going to have to be more overt and active, and affirmatively so. We cannot just trust that the school board has the best interest of the children at heart. Can't just trust that. So we're not going to be able to take for granted what previous generations did, and we're not going to get away with a certain level of passivity that previous generations could justify and say, hey, we're building a business, we're building a family, we're building a charity, we're building a community, and politics is just a season that I engage in. We're not in that era now. This is going to have to be a priority. Not a season, a priority. And therefore, we have to also understand what's the ecosystem we're operating in. Now, we're in a coalition-based system now. We're not a silent majority anymore. I would call us a significant faction is what I would say we are. We're still probably, white evangelicals in particular, are still probably the largest individual faction on the right. But you're not what I would call a hegemony outside of a few places either. And so we're going to have to learn how to operate within a coalition. That does not mean, let me make sure I say this up front right now. That does not mean you just accept whatever excrement sandwich comes down from your coalition because you got to be loyal to your side. That is not what it means. But it does mean you have to understand the ecosystem of how, and the DNA of how that kind of relationship operates in order for you to exert your leverage. You know what else? You know what else is a coalition? A family is. And, you know, if you're a father and a husband in a family, for a while, you're the biggest, toughest, strongest person in that family. You could just exert your will, not care about what everybody else in the coalition thinks, and you get your way for a while. Then there's that day your son comes down the stairs and his voice is deeper than yours and he's shaving a thicker beard. And the clock starts ticking to when he starts saying, you know, I think I'm going to challenge the old man. I think maybe he doesn't have what it takes anymore. That's how you create rebellion, resentment. Paul talks about not, you know, impressing yourself so much on your children that you push them away. Or you operate within these relationships and you understand this person's motivated by this person's motivated by that. Sometimes there does need to be someone that puts their foot down and says, that's bad, we can't do that. But if it's you all the time, that's not a coalition, that's conformity. And the problem with having a coalition based on conformity is we're human beings. We can't even keep up with our own standards. We're just one decision away from being hypocrites and undermining our own integrity all the time. So there's going to have to be give and take. There has to be give and take in any human relationship. And when you're part of a coalition movement politically, the same thing goes. So you see this operate on two fronts, Aaron, in your montage today. What RFK Jr. is doing doing with Susan Menares is he is vouching for her. He is taking credibility that he has earned, rightfully so. There are few men alive in America that have bled more for any cause at all, to the extent that RFK Jr. has suffered for his cause here when it comes to public health. As a result of that, he has a substantial amount of well-earned integrity in this area and credibility. He is transferring a sizable chunk of that. In another context, this would be like co-signing a loan for somebody. And you have to be careful about co-signing a loan for somebody, guys, because what happens if they default and can't make the payment? Who does it come back to?
It's on you.
It's on you. If you know the mob movies, there's a code here. If it turns out you were the one that brought in the informant, vouched for the person that was the informant, what happens to you? They don't just take the informant out to Miller's Crossing, do they? They take you too. RFK Jr. is not getting younger. What is he, 72?
I believe so.
Okay. There has grown in the last couple of years, especially, several other people that have grown fairly large followings and platforms in the space that he has almost singularly operated in for decades, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them are younger and are trying to position themselves to be the future voice of this emerging movement of Maha. And if this goes sideways, this is going to reflect on him. And you're going to see several of these people now come and question him and say, hey, you vouched for this person. And now they're screwing us. This is how it works. And that's actually healthy to some degree. We need accountability. No one has perpetual credibility. We're humans. As Joker has said to Batman in more than one Batman comic book, you're just one bad day away from being on my side of this argument. So what you've seen RFK Jr. do is this is a vouching. I handpicked her. I believe in her. You are seeing a substantial transfer of political wealth here. He has bestowed upon her a level of credibility she does not have on her own. So my position then is, because I believe in his credibility, okay, if he's going to co-sign on the loan, I'll take it. All right? His credit rating with me is good enough. I'll take it. But if she can't make the payments, where am I going? And I won't be alone.
To him?
I'm going to him. Hey, man, you said they were good for it. You put your neck out for this. So when you're in a coalition, be careful who you vouch for. Because it will reflect on you. And the thing you have to make sure you do when you're in a coalition is you have to celebrate the successes of that coalition at least as much as you criticize its shortcomings. If you're the dad, for example, in the coalition of your family, kid brings home a report card, all A's and a B. And your first instinctive reaction, I'm mentioning this as a very specific point because it happened to me once. The first instinctive reaction is to single out the B. That ain't going to work. And you're just sowing the seeds for dissension later on. So make sure you celebrate the successes at least as much. At least as much
is so important,
as the failures.
What you're saying right here.
Okay, so Susan Menarez yesterday, a lot of people looked at that right off the jump until RFK vouched for her and said, that's a failure, right? Okay, no problem with that at all. Here's what I want to see, though, today. I want to see those exact same people that were doing that. The appointments and confirmations of Jay Bhattacharya and Marty Makary are nothing short of heroic. Marty Makary defied his own peer group at Johns Hopkins to side with people like us. Come on shows like this. At a time, you think you were under pressure? Can you imagine the peer pressure someone like Marty Makary with his own academic circles probably faced on a daily basis? The kind of shunning that he was threatened with all of the time. Talking to people like us? Testifying with anti-vaxxers in the Congress? And now he's going to run the FDA? Maybe the number one licensing regulatory bureau in the federal government. That's crazy. It's crazy cool is what it is. And then Jay Bhattacharya, a real man of faith, not a fake one propped up by Big Eva and neo-Marxists like Francis Collins. A real man of faith. A real man of virtue and valor, and if any blessings came out of the scamdemic era at all, it was to meet and know men like Jay Bhattacharya. Real heroes. A real man of science. At not some community college, man. Frickin' Stanford. And now he's got Francis Collins' old job at NIH. Which may provide more grants than any singular department in the United States federal government. That's saying something. So if you were crying and losing it over Susan Menarez yesterday, wasn't very happy about that myself, no problem at all. But if you want to be effective in a coalition, at least the exact same amount of energy that you push back on Susan Menarez with, at least the same. And I would actually argue it should be more if you want to have a healthy coalition. You celebrate successes more than you lament failure. But it's at least got to be a 1-to-1 ratio. If you were losing a spleen over Susan Menarez yesterday, then you should be absolutely jumping for joy over the confirmations of Marty Makary and Jay Bhattacharya today. And if you ripped Trump for Susan Menarez yesterday, you should be praising him up and down the flagpole today for Marty Makary and Jay Bhattacharya. You have any quick thoughts on that, gentlemen, before we head out for the break?
Yeah, we talked a little bit off air. You know, there may be a devil's advocate aspect of the public having to see what they haven't been able to see for a long time, and this woman may fit the bill, that she will actually give a fair hearing to what's coming down the pike in terms of Maha. And so no one can accuse anybody of straw manning. That's the best I can come up with. But of course, I'm of the same mind. I know how complicated this devil is. It wasn't just going to go away.
Here's what we really cannot have in this coalition. Zero-sum psyche. Mm-hmm. There's going to be some wins. There's going to be maybe some L's or some wins that some people think are wins and some people think are L's. Just deal with it. Move on like an adult.
Amen. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at Beam Organics. You know them better as the folks that give you the outstanding dream powder. Help you wind down, wake up energized with a great night's sleep. It's made right here in America. Use code Steve for 40% off your first order. If you are a proud believer in self-reliance, then take responsibility for your health. Because when your sleep is off, you're off. All right. So you want the right kind of sleep as well. I've tried Beam a few times myself. I loved the results that I got. In fact, I was in such a deep sleep when the alarm went off. I was like, on one end, I was like, wow. It felt like I just fell asleep. On the other end, I was like, wow, I'm really awake. It's designed to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, wake up feeling amazing. It's got all natural ingredients like magnesium, melatonin, and more. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Okay, man, but do I want to put a bunch of sugar and carbs in my system right before bed, especially if I'm one of those, fasters, intermittent fasters? And I'm big into that too. You don't have to worry about that. It tastes fine, but it's not loaded with all that sugar and carbs. Okay. So get 40% off right now. Try their best-selling Dream Powder. There's lots of different flavors. The Dream is their standard. I do the chocolate and peanut butter, but they got lots of different flavors. But you can try the best-selling Dream Powder at 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/Steve. That's shopbeam.com/Steve. BEAM. Shopbeam.com/Steve. Use that code for 40% off. And support an American company and invest in yourself. Start getting your best sleep tonight. All right, before we go to buy, sell, or hold, I want to make sure we aren't wrong about something, okay? Because I didn't kind of say this. I flat out said it yesterday. I thought the Trump administration had a bit of a mess letting someone in to a chat who didn't belong there, right? I thought they did a fine job cleaning it up. Now, this continues to be a main topic of conversation on X right now as we speak. Okay, the quote unquote journalist in question put forth the entire transcription. I've not had a chance to. I've read the first one. I didn't have a chance to read this one, but from people's opinions that I respect, it seems like the first one kind of puts everything in. The second one, the full one, puts everything in better context and makes the group actually look like they were even more critical thinking than what the first leak was, right? Okay, so am I missing something? There's still a whole bunch of traffic and discussion about this?
Yeah, well, I think a main driver of that is that this story just so happened to drop before we had 2 straight days of Intel community briefings before both the Senate and the House. That was already scheduled. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's kind of interesting timing.
Yeah, that is very interesting timing. You're right about that. But are we now so is the Trump administration in danger of just continuing to talk about something that is not a story? Or do they have to keep confronting this, do you think?
They don't have to keep in front of this, but they're also in danger of just creating something out of nothing by paying attention to it. Like I said, these people are... The people who are saying this is a big deal were the same people who didn't want to ask any questions about the Afghanistan withdrawal.
Or how many hundreds of terrorists came in through the southern border.
Yes, the press...
or Joe Biden's mental state, or
I'm not trying
Hunter Biden's laptop.
I'm not trying to flex or anything. There's a reason I didn't put anything about this in the montage today. It's time to move on.
It is time to move on. Yeah, I'm still seeing a lot of again, MAGA people I know and I'm friendly with, and even the administration continues to respond and push back on this. And there's a ratio where you can give oxygen to something, then at the same time, but you can't put your head in the sand either, right? So that's situational. I don't know. I'm asking because I don't see any evidence that this has penetrated any bubble other than the X bubble, which again, I will no longer say Twitter or X is not real life. It was demonstrated in this last election. It has great political influence and impact, but it's also not all of life at the same time. It is still a separate ecosystem from where most of America lives. My concern that I'm airing here, so just to put it bluntly, because I don't know any other way, my concern is that a story that has not penetrated the normie bubble at all, And the normie bubble has been, hey, the Trump administration knows what it's doing. It's on point. It's getting stuff done. We're going to give it some slack, even on things we don't necessarily buy into, like the tariff schemes and everything else. But we like where things are going, and just keep doing it, fix it, and back to our daily lives. Right? And this is something that the enemy media desperately wants to penetrate that bubble. See, they can't get out of their own way. See, they're radicals. See, they step on rakes. And see, they're dangerous. See, they can't govern, yada, yada, yada. So I thought the initial pushback on this was very well done. And maybe, and I don't have a problem with the pushback that is happening in terms of its execution, but but its premise. How many more days do we want to keep talking about this on our side, even if it's a narrative that is in favor of us? You see what I'm saying? Before we are giving something oxygen that maybe should have already been dead. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, the real story.
I could be wrong. I'm asking.
Well, the real story isn't whether there's something that there has to be a mea culpa for, whether it's legitimate or just to make it go away. The real story is that the press has been on the ropes and the sidelines for a very long time, and Goldberg managed to find a golden ticket to get in there, and now all the rest of the press are going to make this stay alive to remind you how important they are. That's why Aaron is right. Ignore them, move on. Just like they're the same. It's the same story as the judges. This is not. It's not a story because they say it's a story. Move on.
Aaron, where are you at on this?
I'm right where Todd just said.
Okay. All right. So you guys, my instincts are we're in danger of fanning flames that we had already doused. You guys seem to agree with that?
Yeah.
And so back to regularly scheduled programming and saving America.
Yeah.
How many times do we have to discredit Jeffrey Goldberg? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking. Does it have to be 17 times, 14 times, 28, 9? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking.
Or pretend he doesn't exist because he really doesn't.
He really does. See, I don't think he really does. I think this last election, by and large, proved this. I think this last election, by and large, proved that in terms of agency with the American people, he does not exist. There is a person that works at the Atlantic called Jeffrey Goldberg, but in terms of agency with the American people, he does not exist. So why are we still responding to him then?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to see if I was missing something. Okay. All right. Let's go. By the way, have you guys seen the obituary Tucker Carlson just released for his dad?
I haven't read it. I mean, I've seen it.
I read it during the break. Someone sent it to me, and so when you guys got up to stretch during the break, I read it. And I stayed here and read it. It might be the greatest obituary for a dad I've ever read. I mean, it is poignant. It is something else. All right, let's get to buy, sell, or hold. And you guys know how this works. You submit the proposition to Aaron. He determines whether or not he will submit it to Todd and I. And then if he does, Todd, you and I are going to decide. Are we going to buy that? Are we going to sell it? You are permitted to use a hold because the segment is called buy, sell, or hold, right? But just because you're permitted to do a thing doesn't mean you should do that thing, all right? So if you choose to use your hold, you need to know and you need to recognize that you've punked yourself, you've played yourself, you have betrayed your half of the species, you are in mortal danger. You've committed a mortal sin against the dude code, all right, by this level of flaccidity, okay? And what is a good, in celebration of a contract extension, what is a worthy punishment for that act? What is a worthy punishment for that act? What is it that you would be just completely flummoxed by? You have to read Lindsey Graham's signal messages. Out loud.
It's a fate worse than death. Out loud
in a public venue.
And
have them attributed to yourself.
Okay.
No.
I was about to dip my toe in that pool, but no.
You were, at first you're like, I got to know, and then you're like, I don't need to know. No, I don't need to know. I'm good. Ignorance is bliss. All right, Aaron, go ahead.
All right, up first, we'll go to Tiny Johnny. Top 10 suggestions for a more right-wing Disney sequel or remake. 10, The Lion Judge.
Nice.
9, Pirates of the Suez Canal, Curse of the USS Harry S. Truman.
Pirates of the Suez Canal.
Number 8, funny. Herbie Fully Maga.
Nice.
Number 7, Vance Everlasting.
Vance Everlasting is great.
Number 6, Remember the Genders.
No, that's great too. That's great.
5, Lady and the Trump.
That's good.
4, Honey, I Shrunk the Government.
Oh, if only.
3, Wall-E. 2, Wall-E Completes the Wall.
Nice.
2, Alice in Greenland.
Alice in Greenland.
And number 1, Elodin. I think that's supposed to be Elon. Yeah. Elodin.
Oh, that's a pretty good list, man. Yeah. I mean, there were several out there that you got an audible reaction from me for. So well done. That's a great list.
Next, we go to Ben Wisdom. Everyone is forgetting legislative alternatives to impeachment that only require simple majorities to head off the judicial coup. 1, restricting the use of restraining orders to a minimum of 3 judge panels. 2, adding more judicial positions to certain districts and filling them with judges that follow the Constitution. 3, removing certain topics from the court's jurisdiction. And 4, defunding certain districts or circuits when they don't rule in line with the Constitution.
So, Ben, I can't speak for everyone. I have not forgotten. I'll just speak for myself. I haven't forgotten any of those things. I just don't believe we can get the votes to do any of them.
Bingo. You seem to have forgotten that we just don't have.
Yeah, I might argue you seem to have forgotten who's actually serving in the U.S. Congress in both chambers. I just don't believe we can do any of those. I don't believe any of them will get done. I don't see how you get a +1 vote in the House. I don't see how you get a majority for that in the Senate. I just don't, guys. Okay, when I talk about coalition. Just to reset this, I don't mean like we're in a coalition with the Republican Congress. That's a public nuisance. They're like a public utility. Okay, I have to use them, but in many cases that I don't like them and their customer service department sucks, right? At this point, just keep the lights on. I don't ask them to do anything more and make sure the water's clear. And if I ask for anything more, then that was a me problem, right? You see what I'm saying? Okay. They're not part of what I'm talking about. People that are actually interested in saving America. Now there's always a remnant. There are people within those bodies that I would view as in our coalition, but I do not view those bodies just because they're under Republican control to be in my coalition. They're not. And almost anything we get them to do, we'll have to get them to do it against their will. So if we go down your road, which I'm fine with, I'm just going to tell you right now, that's only getting done if Donald Trump makes it happen. Donald Trump literally has to say to every senator and every member of Congress, if you don't do those things legislatively, I'll personally make it my mission to take you out in the next primary cycle. So Donald Trump, we can't escape this no matter which path we take, folks. So whether it's Donald Trump versus the judicial branch, and he goes full Abraham Lincoln and says, I'm not doing that. You take your Dred Scott, stick it where the sun don't shine, or whether it's the legislative branch and Trump goes not thumb on the scale, not even hand on the scale, but literally steps on it with his full body weight and says, I will Miller's Crossing. I will turn the next primary cycle into Miller's Crossing. The Red Wedding, unless you do the things that are in Ben Wisdom's tweet. In either case, we have no choice but to ask Donald Trump to expend an unusual, if not historic amount of political capital to make what we need to have happen. He's the only real hero we have. There's other people that if they were empowered to be heroes were. Chip Roy runs no committee of great standing, is not in any leadership. Neither is Mike Lee. Rand Paul runs a key committee, but he's not in any leadership. Same for Ted Cruz. We got 5 or 6 in the Senate, guys, maybe 15, 20 in the House. That's what we got. That's our that's the representative coalition we have in those bodies. So, you guys, I'm okay with which. I don't know Donald Trump well enough to know which of these two arenas he's better equipped to handle. I don't know the roster. I don't know the roster. And the personas and skills and talents of the people inside of his administration to say, I think you're better off expending that capital against the judges directly or by pushing Congress to do their job. But either way, whichever, impeaching judges is a great talking point. Won't happen. We've done it 15 times ever, haven't done it since 2010, and that was because of bribery. And you need a 2/3 vote in the Senate. That's never happening. And so that's a colossal waste of time, which is exactly why many people like Nancy Mace are pushing that talking point. Because we always come back to this intersection on the right between what we can get trending to give people a quick off, to give people a quick release of pheromones and dopamine. And then, okay, you go about your day. But that's not the basis for a relationship, guys. Okay? So we have this constant conflict on the right between what trends, what gets us off, and then what we will actually do. The impeach the judges thing is a waste of everybody's time. It's never happening. And even if you could, the time it would take to get rid of one, we're going to have 15, 16, 20 federal judges essentially building a wall, but except around the White House by then. It'll be finished. All the political capital and time will take on getting rid of one judge. They will finish the wall around the White House. You'll literally see judges out there in black robes, man, hammer and nail. So there's going to take to save the country, and his second term will require an extraordinary, unprecedented amount of political capital expended by a president. That's not in debate. That's not in debate. That's not even in dispute. The debate is, where's that better spent? I'm not qualified to know the answer to that. My bias is, because I'm sick of being told what to do by unelected judges, and I've been fighting in my entire career, my bias is to go punch the bully in the nose. But I don't know the relationships. I'm in a coalition. I don't know all the relationships up there. I don't know how much capital, how far Trump could really push people. I don't know. But either way, we're going to have to either bully Congress. Let me rephrase that. Trump is going to either have to bully Congress into doing its job, according to what, with the stuff that, Ben, you have in your tweet or post, or he's going to have to expend that capital just routinely telling judges we're not doing that and we're not enforcing that, and just letting the political fallout to whatever that may or may not be come what may. I don't see another path out here. Trump's the only hero right now we have on this. And that's been the case for several years. So whether that's a buy or a sell, I have no idea. Todd?
The people remain the problem. I'm with you. The Congress is filled with people are there for the NIL money. And then the people that are real, they are. And it's the same damn thing. Don't kid yourself. Same shiny idol, both ways. And the people complaining about it the most insist that they're, whatever they got going on is so important. They can only fight so much, but they must do it anonymously while they maintain their toy lightsaber and video game habits. The people are the problem.
I should have just used his answer. It was a lot shorter and probably better than mine. All right, more in a moment. Stay tuned. Hour 2 is next. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Aaron McIntyre, Todd Erzin, and all of you. And let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Also, hit us up with a 5-star review if you've yet to do that. Now, as I mentioned earlier, now's a great time. All right, so you can only be in one major category on iTunes at a time. And really, since the history of the show, we've been in the news politics category, which is where virtually everybody else in our industry is. We're experimenting with placing the show right now, though, in the religion spirituality category. Just because we are just really concerned about where the church is at. Who wrote the article? It was Christianity Today. Christianity Seldom had an article out this week talking about, I saw it trending. I did not get a chance to read it because that would require me to click on a link to Christianity Seldom. And I think I'd rather read what Ethel is writing over at Right Wing Watch at this point. She's more honest. But I did see that the premise of the article is the church is not ready for the rightward shift of the culture. It's not. It's not. And the church should be leading it, actually. Should be leading it. And it's not. Here's the thing. The idea, Christianity Seldom saying the church is not ready, That just goes to show you the whole flaw. They're revealing to you the whole flaw of this last era of evangelicalism. We used language not ready like a business. IBM was not ready for Steve Jobs. The news media was not ready for people to just be able to get their content on the internet for free rather than putting $1.50 in a machine anymore. You see what I'm saying? We use these kinds of this kind of nomenclature to denote transitions or shifts in cultural trends, socioeconomic trends, technological innovations get applied to human endeavors like commerce. It should never apply to the church. Unless we're in an era where the church has traded much of its witness in for human endeavors, then it would. Because that article is sadly correct. The church is not ready for the rightward shift in the culture. When just about any other period of time in the history of Western civilization, if there was a rightward shift in the culture, the church led it. The church led it. That's the way it was. That's the way it's supposed to go here. So we're greatly concerned about where the church is. I am more intently going after that audience on all the platforms I'm involved in. And so for now, we're going to list the show in the religion spirituality category and see if we can gather in some chicks here. Not like chicks, you know what I'm saying? Like a hen gathers in her chicks. Never mind. Anyway, we're going to see if we can get some of those people in that maybe are used to getting the soft-headed, softer side of Sears. It's full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. The salt that's lost its savor and is no use to anybody but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. See if we can get some of those people here. So you could help us with that. All right. So if you've yet to put the 5-star review in, now would be a great time. Help us pop in that category, get more notice in that category, because we have got, I'm just going to say it, guys, we got to evangelize the church. We have to disciple the church. We have to catechize the church. In many respects, MAGA is ahead of the church in terms of confronting the spirit of the age. That both is a credit to MAGA, but also a warning. That can't last. That's a moment. We can have moments of uprisings, moments of I can't take any more. But that won't sustain a movement. And we need the institution that is to sustain such moments to become movements. We need to get them in the game. So please, if you've yet to leave us a 5-star review, now is the time. Hit subscribe or follow if you're on iTunes as well. Thanks for all of you that have done all those things. Thanks to our friends at My Patriot Supply. They didn't just wait around and say, boy, I wish we had something just in case disaster hit and we couldn't trust government like we never should have. No, they already are ready for you. Now you've got to go to them, right? And I get it, man. You're like, come on, that could really... I'm in rural North Carolina, man. Okay? I mean, we are the very definition of self-reliance here. We can do things with our hands. People like Steve Deace could not even pronounce the words. And then a natural disaster hit. And then another natural disaster hit. Government. And that's when I finally called My Patriot Supply and I said, listen, if that could happen to those people, because those are like, when it goes down, they're on those were the people that were like on my list of the people to run to shelter with. I'm going to shelter in place with those folks. They're on my list. All right. I'm coming. Okay. And if they can succumb to this, I've got no chance. Right. So I called My Patriot Supply right away and I said, I'm in. Hook me up with absolutely everything now. So I'm not just a pitch man. I'm a customer. All right. So you've got to do the same thing. Order their 4-week emergency food supply today and get 4 72-hour food kits completely free. That's almost 2 weeks of bonus meals at no cost. And each of these kits offers over 2,000 calories per day, easy to prepare meals, a wide variety of foods as well, last for up to 25 years to give you that real peace of mind. Stock up today before this deal disappears, before you're the next people that that could never happen here and it happens to you. All right, go to preparewithdace.com, claim your kit, plus an extra 12 days of food for free. Go to preparewithdace.com. That's preparewithdace.com. All right, coming up at the bottom of the hour, Daniel Horowitz will join us. Let's continue some buy, sell, or hold, Aaron.
All right, next we go to Brian Snyder. The millennium is 1,000 turnings. The millennium is 1,000 turnings.
I need to know. I'm guessing turnings are like fourth turnings?
Turnings, yep.
That's the context for turnings.
Yes.
What is the context for millennium?
I believe this is the eschatological period that's referred to as, what is the millennial kingdom?
Okay, that's the context he's addressing. All right.
Sell.
I'll let you sell first. Go ahead.
And I'm restating the argument of the book that the turnings are something that kicked in the more linear time was lived, and when we lived a more cyclical style of belief, practice, etc., these did not kick in, and then the more industrialized we got, they accelerated all the more. So the point being is that if you accept the premise that we talked about in the fourth turning, they haven't turned the same way for all of time. So your 1,000 years, it hasn't gone on that long in the same fashion.
I'm going to sell because I don't have a definitive answer on what the millennium is. And there are people throughout the history of the church who have been clearly bestowed a level of Holy Spirit authority that don't even agree with each other on what that term means. So I'm just not going to render a definitive verdict. I don't know whether it means a literal millennium. I don't know if that means, therefore, a literal millennium after, say, a rapture. I don't, whether that rapture happens before a tribulation begins, in the middle of it, or afterwards, whether it is a metaphorical period of time, whether it's a period of time that comes after the church completes its mission to disciple the nations. I don't know the answer to that. And one of the dumbest things I ever did was I should have just accepted face value the pre-trib dispensational view of everything that everyone's taught. I'd have a lot more friends. Life would be easier. Roles of who I do and don't like would be so much easier and simpler. I did this really dumb, stupid thing where I thought I should maybe study what Christianity thought for 2,000 years. That was a mistake. All right. And so now I've got all kinds of confusions and I don't know. And then I went even a step further in terms of complete buffoonery and then read what everybody's arguments against one another were, okay, at the same time. And so I don't know. Guys, I just don't know. Here's what I know. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. I know that.
Next up, we go to ID Crisis. In discussing the Marxist madness bracket, Dick Levine, quote unquote, holding firm is the funniest double entendres so far this year.
That was unintentional, by the way. I did not intend for that, but I'll buy, sure. The fact that it was unintentional, I think even maybe meets that standard all the more.
Fair enough, bye.
It was not an intentional one.
The Blake Crows says Jasmine Crockett is testing the limits of free speech to bait Republicans into violating her First Amendment right. It's an attempt to push us towards speech tyranny we're seeing in the UK. Buy, sell, or hold.
I'm going to sell. I think she's just trying to play ghetto when she went to the most exclusive private schools you could have possibly imagined. Okay. So the only, in fact, her attempt to play ghetto, there's nothing ghetto about her other than the melanin level in her skin. I lived in the South Side Bottoms. I was on food stamps. I was on reduced lunch at the public school. I ate government cheese. Okay? It's just I don't get to call myself ghetto because I'm white. There's nothing ghetto about her. It's an entirely fabricated cherry girl image to the fake eyelashes and everything else. Okay? I mean, she prior to like 6 months ago, she was the female version of the Wayans brothers. skit, if you remember that skit where they basically were twin versions of Carlton on The Fresh Prince. You remember that skit? Okay. That's essentially what she was. And I've just had it. I have no tolerance. I'm done with it. I have no grace left within me for any form of racial narrative. I just don't. I'm just on either end. I have no room for interpretation of it anymore. This stuff has just rotted away at the soul of America for too cotton picking long, and it's just time to treat it with absolute maximum prejudice. She's just a black woman. That's all she is. She's not ghetto. There's nothing ghetto about her. She's playing a role, which in and of itself is racist, to think that this is essentially what her base wants. Who are her base? The people watching the Harpies on The View and MSNBC. That's her base. She thinks this is what the Elizabeth Warren base wants of her. So she's playing a role. That is all. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay. She's chocolate ice. Dennis Van Winkle grew up in the mean streets. What was it? Plano, I think it was, some suburb of Dallas, wasn't it? Where the man that went on to become known as Vanilla Ice, isn't that where he grew up?
I don't know.
I think Dennis Van Winkle was his name. Something like that. I mean, I'll have to look that up. But I thought he grew up in some suburb of Dallas. Vanilla Ice, real name. Robert Matt Van Winkle. I'm sorry. Robert Van Winkle was his real name. Okay. And the whole thing was, and yes, he grew up in a suburb of Dallas and then Miami. Okay. So she's black ice or chocolate ice. That's all she is. It's a complete and total role she is playing. She's playing ghetto, playing street. The whole thing's contrived. It's just more believable than Robert Van Winkle because she has more melanin, but it's the same scam, okay? It's the same exact scam, all right? Much of this audience is white, and almost none of you grew up in the amount of privilege that she did, all right? So I've had it with all of it. Completely had it, and I have nothing but bitterness, loathing, and detesting for all of this. That's all that remains.
I'm selling, but she's not doing it because it's primarily racial. She's doing it for the NIL money. She's doing it because she's getting paid. This is going to be a lucrative career choice for her. She's no different from the guys. I think it was on Maryland this weekend. They just won on like a last-second shot. They asked him, "What do you like about playing here?" "A coach brings the money." That's a direct quote.
That the guy who hit the game-winning shot,
yes,
who's about to maybe be a top 3 pick in the NBA draft. So it's not like he's going to be wondering where his next meal is coming from. That was literally his answer at the end of the game.
Yes.
After the game, well, Coach Willard, make sure he gets paid. He literally said that.
And so is she.
Yeah.
All right. Similar subject. Mount Rushmore of submarine movies.
What are we doing here?
That contract extension is signed, correct?
How many?
You tell me.
How many are there? I just looked at the list.
At least 4.
Yes, I'm
There's at least 4.
Okay.
This is the best submarine movie I've seen on a Thursday ever.
Coach Okra.
Mount Rushmore of submarine movies. This might be our first legit hold because this is simultaneously the only 4. Well, this is the only 4 submarine movies that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
and so you can't buy or sell because it's both, so it's a hold. This is simultaneously the best and worst. U-571, Crimson Tide, Hunt for Red October, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
I've never seen U-571. I've seen the other 3. Loved them. I loved 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea as a kid. I can't believe that's never been remade with today's technology. I mean, Hunt for Red October is a great film. Crimson Tide is a very fun film. So I'll buy the list. Isn't there a movie, isn't that what Das Boot? Which is considered like one of the critics' favorite war movies ever. Wasn't that a submarine movie? I mean, I never saw it because it's called Das Boot. That immediately just told me Steve Deace will not like this movie. All right, but I believe that's a sub movie. So maybe that should have been there somewhere.
Does Inner Space count? Isn't that what the name of the movie where Dennis Quaid gets shrunk down into a submarine and ends up inside Martin Short's body? Is that?
Yeah.
Does that count?
I had forgotten about that. There you go.
Called Inner Space?
It was called Inner Space. Yeah. I had completely forgotten about that.
Man. We are just teaming with submarine movies.
Dennis Quaid, man, has an eclectic catalog of films.
Oh, he's a fan.
I mean, it's like everywhere. I mean, it's all over the place.
Well,
he's done literally everything other than be a superhero. He's done everything else but that.
He was an A-list actor, and after multiple divorces, got saved and does a lot of Jesus stuff now.
Yeah, but his whole career is a very eclectic catalog.
Oh, there's
of
amazing
films.
movies. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Next up, we go to G. Roberts' Alien in My Own Nation. Steve has quietly become Donald J. Trump's fanboy. He will likely deny this truth, but actions and words prove this fact. Steve is MAGA.
Well, if we're including the other thing in your definition, then I will buy. I mean, if you go back and listen to there's a reason why I came this close to accepting Trump's offer a decade ago. Because years before, the right talked about things like, why do we just give corporations whatever they want? So you guys know, because Aaron literally grew up listening to it. You listen to it locally. The themes that MAGA talks about today, I was doing that show on WHO almost 20 years ago. Why do we just give corporations everything? Why do we ship our jobs overseas? What are we still doing in Iraq? I did all those shows. I did all those shows when I first started on the air. Some of these things made no sense to me. And questioning those conventional wisdoms, man, oh, goodness gracious. I mean, I had every GOP donor you could imagine in Iowa trying to get me fired, taken off the air, threatening to pull advertising. One of the biggest ethanol guys in Iowa was funding the entire farm show on WHO radio, and that's a pretty lucrative endeavor. He pulled all of his money off that show because they would not fire me for talking about the kinds of themes back in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10 that MAGA regularly talks about now. And Trump was speaking to those things. That's what I found fascinating. You know, it made no sense to me. Okay, great. So we shipped all of our jobs. So we opened up a trade deal with NAFTA. But instead of sending them capitalism so they would build a middle class, I did this show 15 years ago. So instead of building a middle class, they instead sent us their illegal aliens, and we sent our jobs down there to kill our middle class. What the hell kind of deal was that? I did that show in Des Moines, Iowa, statewide, and nearly got killed for it, literally, multiple times. So there are some of these are themes that I have talked about long before there was even a MAGA. It's just, it was in Des Moines, Iowa, you know, and so one state of people listening to it on a 50,000 watt radio station heard it, and not a presidential candidate. So if you're going to include that, then I'll buy. Okay. Steve cheerleads for what Steve likes. If you ever catch me cheerleading for things I don't like, let me know. I cheerlead for things I like. I like much of what they're doing, so I cheerlead for it. I don't like Paula White. I don't cheerlead for that. I'm a pretty simple creature, as far as I know. You guys work here every day. Is it any more complicated than that? Mm-hmm. If I like something, I like it. If I don't, I don't. Is it really any more complicated than that?
Well, I mean, you're arguing against people who honestly, apparently, with
am I supposed to be pissed off that Jay Bhattacharya, who most of America found out who it was from shows like this, by the way. Am I supposed to be pissed off that Jay Bhattacharya and Marty Makary, who got known from coming on shows like this, are now holding two of the most prominent positions of healthcare policy in America? Am I supposed to just root against that?
Yes, especially in a coalition government. You're supposed to root against this. You're supposed to have zero sum. Unless you get everything that you want down to every jot and tittle, you were supposed to throw everything else out. That's the way that this works.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, then, if the opposite of that, if there's nothing between fanboy and that, then I'll take fanboy, because at least I'm getting somewhere. Okay? Because what you described, Aaron, that's a road to nowhere.
Well, is this person prepared to say that another term of Biden or Kamala would be the same or better than what's going on here? Because unless that's the case, then you're also, by your own standard, a fanboy as well. You're just so damn juvenile. Which is why, is this an anonymous account?
I already moved on. I couldn't tell. Next up, we got a Chris Leach. If Trump loses the ability to fire federal employees in a Supreme Court ruling, he should hire double the amount of employees to accelerate the demise of our country.
He can't lose that ability. I just reject the entire premise.
I
reject the premise, but I love
if you lose that ability, he loses the ability to hire.
Why have a president? Stephen Miller's messaging on this today is good. Again, these judges, they are acting as if they're presidents. That is correct. Okay. Now, Stephen Miller isn't king, so he can't just unilaterally act. He's an advisor. But at least, I will tell you this is a positive. We have never had an advisor close to a president of the United States saying things about the judiciary
one,
that Stephen Miller is saying in every platform right now. So what we need to be hoping and praying for is that is setting the stage for something. And that and you know, when you're within Trump's inner sphere, it's just as likely that you are speaking on his behalf as you are trying to get his attention. You know, and we don't know because we're not that close. So I don't know if Stephen Miller has been dispatched to till the soil for Trump to eventually flip the bird to the courts. I don't know. I don't know if internally they're debating what they should do, and so Stephen Miller is using his platform to make the case for whatever the side of the argument that he's on. Okay, but I'm on the same side of the argument Stephen Miller's on. Just to state for the record, I'm on his side. So. Now, I do love this kind of snotty conclusion, though. So I'll buy, because I get what you're doing, Chris. I love, hey, if this is their standard, then make them choke on it. I'm kind of for that as a general rule. But Todd is correct. We should just not grant them the premise they have the power to do that because they don't. Advise and consent, those are the powers they have. Force and will are not the powers they have. And there's a reason why they have no ability to self-enforce any of their opinions that they advise and consent on. There's a reason why they have no ability to enforce any of their orders. What, we just thought the Founding Fathers forgot to give them a standing army? We just forgot the Founding Fathers forgot to give the Supreme Court a police force? The Founding Fathers forgot to give the Supreme Court the Supreme Guard who could go out there and enforce their edicts. No, on purpose, they're not granted those things. That is the trade-off for a lifetime appointment. All right, so they're not independent of the will of the people. They're independent of the other branches, but even that is to a point because they can't fund themselves. They can't appoint themselves. They can't confirm themselves. They're wholly reliant on the other two branches. So they don't have, I love your snotty conclusion, brother, but Todd, you are correct. They do not have the power that they are claiming they have. Stop giving it to them. Stephen Miller is correct.
All right, next up we go to Live Free, who says one side is currently vandalizing the private property of strangers and smearing boogers, vomit, poop, etc. on other people's stuff. In addition, I've seen a couple of videos of people actually stopping in traffic, getting out of their cars to harass Tesla drivers. Live Free says the dividing line separating the two sides cannot be more clear, and anyone who still fails to recognize this evil should be perceived as supporting it.
By 100%. If anything, there's a Tesla dealer literally across the street from where we are. I am half tempted to go over there and just buy one in the hopes someone does this to me because I could use an outlet for unrequited frustration. I'll buy.
I'm going to sell because your instant buy is so obvious that this has to do with what we talked about in the overtime, and I want to... It is so obvious, yet no one does the thing. They are true believers. They are orcs, but they're true believers. The question is not to you see. I just think it's a little bit too. Well, like, these are the good guys and the bad guys. The bad guys of the current variety exist because the so-called good guys are pretty damn bad themselves. It's just in a different way. We're lazy. We're soft. We're disinterested. We can't even be bothered. It's a people problem. We've got to reconcile ourselves to that.
When I came in today, you asked me what kind of reaction we got to Joel Webbin yesterday. Mm-hmm. Right? And I told you, actually, I forgot he was even on because we didn't get as much reaction as I thought. I have now received about 20 emails on submarine movies, by the way. And in fact, this is the very first time I've received a heads up about Periscope Down starring Kelsey Grammer. So,
speaking of Kelsey Grammer,
have inspired some true greatness here.
Speaking of Kelsey Grammer, Steve.
Yes.
Let's move here next.
Okay,
some fun pop culture stuff. As we have been broadcasting today, Marvel has announced the full cast for Avengers Doomsday. Todd, you can just leave now if you want.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Oh, I'm not leaving. I'm going to smash idols.
Bison Kelsey Grammer has actually been cast in this, I think I saw.
As Beast?
As Beast, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I did not. No, but that's who he has been. That's who he was in the Fox
I didn't know that.
X-Men universe. Yeah.
All right, let's go through this. Buy, sell, or hold these casting decisions as I get down to the end here. Vanessa Kirby, Anthony Mackie, Chris Hemsworth, starring in Avengers Doomsday. Buy, sell, or hold?
I mean, those are all major Marvel characters, so I'll buy.
Sebastian Stan as Bucky.
Okay.
Got to buy that.
Yep.
Letitia Wright, Black Panther.
They got to do something with that character. She's the logical progression. Yeah.
Paul Rudd as Ant-Man.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of played him out in the last movie, but okay.
Wyatt Russell, U.S. Agent.
I think
what is U.S. Agent?
He's the guy that gets hired in the comics to replace Captain America, and he can't handle it. Okay, can't handle the spotlight. Again, kind of goes rogue. So I think he's just a useless candidate. Frankly, I'll sell.
Tina Kurita Mejia
as Namor.
As Namor.
He played that in the Black Panther movie.
This is going to be so bad.
Sell. I mean, these aren't major characters to most people.
Ebon Moss-Bachrach.
He's the Thing.
As the Thing.
Yeah. So you got to feature the Fantastic Four. Sure. So I'll buy. Yeah.
Simu Liu as Shang-Chi.
Underrated film, but again, not a major character to most people.
Florence Pugh as Yelena.
Again, she's an in-demand actress, but not a major character to most people.
Isn't she like basically the female equivalent of Pascal?
She's in everything now. Yeah, you mean? Yeah, and she's the replacement for Black Widow.
All right, that's all I've seen so far.
Yeah. You
really excited?
This is turning out to be exactly what I thought the first version was going to be. That they're never going to be able to make this work. Mm-hmm. And I was utterly wrong about that. But come on, all of this, nobody's liked the movies. They haven't been good so far. That's the exact opposite of last time. They're not. God, they're making fun of you.
Let's say this roster of talent and character. You know what? Let me use the vernacular of the time of year we're in. It's way more NIT than NCAA tournament. If you catch my drift.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody have the courage to Snow White this thing. Don't go see it.
Way more NIT than NCAA tournament. Kind of feels like a bunch of characters who weren't good enough to make March Madness, but have some brand. So if we put them all in an event by themselves, the sum will be greater than the parts, essentially. You know? Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, there's no there's no Steve Rogers. There's no Tony Stark. There's no Bruce Banner.
Tony Stark is Doom now.
Well, the actor is, but
wink.
Yes, yeah. All right, we'll come back. Daniel Horowitz is going to join us for some more Woe and Lamentation to pick up where Todd left off. Stay tuned. Back here on the Steve Deace Show, brought to you by our friends over at Miracle Made. You know I love my Miracle Made sheets with the silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA. They make thermo-regulating for you all night long, year-round, easier, which is key to getting a good night's sleep, not being too hot, not being too cold. They're comfortable as well. And by the way, that same exact fabric also helps to prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth on your sheets as well. So they stay cleaner and fresher about 3 times longer than other sheets. So upgrade your sleep by going to trymiracle.com/Deace. You will not regret it. Trymiracle.com/Deace, whether you're buying them for yourself or a gift for a loved one. And if you order today, you can save over 40% off. And if you use our promo code Deace at checkout, you'll get a free 3-piece towel set and save an extra 20% off as well. And Miracle is so confident in their product, and they should be, that they're backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. You're not going to need that, but just in case you're a person of poor taste, and that's you. You don't fail. Miracle Made sheets don't fail. You fail them. So you might be the one. They give you 100% off. That's how much I love these things, Todd. Going too far, do you think, or not?
It's like I wrote that right there. That's outstanding.
Was that obnoxious enough? That got your attention, didn't it? Was
The
it?
sheets who hold you in contempt. I love it.
Right now, we're called Miracle Maid, Steve, not Smug Maid. Okay, thank you. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Maid. Go to trymiracle.com/Deace and use that promo code Deace for the extra savings. Over 40% off and a free towel set as well. Trymiracle.com/Deace, promo code Deace. Let's bring in the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz. Good to see you, my friend. I want to start by getting your take on something that we were discussing at the top of the show. And we kind of have our first, in terms of media controversy, we kind of have the very first one of this Trump presidency that we had a ton of by this point, even in the first presidency. Many of them contrived, some of them legitimate rake steps. Okay, and so there was clearly a screw up that gave Jeffrey Goldberg some access to a Signal account he shouldn't have not had access to. Right, all right, and frankly, I think the way the Trump administration has largely responded to this, the media is trying desperately to make this its foray back into relevance. And so yesterday at this time, I actually thought they were doing a very good job of cleaning up their own mess, which I didn't think they did a good job of the first term, right? But this is still going on as we speak. And while I don't think anymore that Twitter is not real life, I think the last election showed it is. I also don't think it's part of all of life either, that it's its own independent ecosystem of many Americans. And the media desperately wants this story to cross over into normie America. See, these are still amateurs. He's still a train wreck, still undisciplined. And so we were discussing amongst ourselves, even if the narrative is in your favor, are you giving them oxygen at this point on our side by continuing to talk about this as much as we are? Should we just move on? I mean, how many times do you have to discredit Jeffrey Goldberg? 4 times, 15 times, 27, 34? Is there a magic number? So we're wondering, are we giving this thing oxygen now that it long ago probably didn't deserve? What are your thoughts?
I mean, this is the only thing conservative media is capable of talking about and the like. So we're going to have more of this entire presidency. I mean, there are so many things we could be talking about. Trump's executive order on election integrity. I mean, how Democrats want non-citizens to vote. Anything to do with illegal immigration, foreign labor, cutting spending, cutting inflation. I mean, anything that takes you off of that, in my view, is a loss, especially as you noted on something that I don't think people care. So what you used Signal and Jeffrey Goldberg, if anything, it would be right-wingers like us that would be ticked off about that. I mean, it's not something swing voters would care about. We would care, who in the admin is talking with this guy. Mm-hmm. And number 2, I'm not so hot to trot about some of JD's comments that were revealed there and his ignorance that only 3% of our shipping goes through there. It goes to Europe. Yeah, because it goes to Europe and then it stops in America later. And some of the ones that don't stop there is because we don't have modernized ports, thanks to the longshoremen that Trump is allies with. So, I mean, there's things I didn't like about that I feel that something that rhymes with Tucker might be getting a hold of JD and his thought process with this reactionaryism that the absence of a Wilsonian neocon is somehow like, you could block our shipping lanes. That I actually didn't like. But to bring back to your point, I can't imagine how you even message this in an election.
Right.
So, yeah, I agree. I mean, every day we're talking about this is a missed opportunity.
Now, is it possible that we're the ones looking at it wrong then? That because of what you just said, because it's impossible for the other side to message this in an election, then if this is what you guys want to, stake your claim of credibility on, then we'll just park right here and just keep clubbing you over the head with it. Let's critique our own analysis. Are we? Could we be wrong then? Do we have it backwards potentially?
I mean, I think it's just too in the weeds. It's kind of like with Trump impeachment with Ukraine. People couldn't even articulate what it was about. So I just don't think there's any hay to be made here.
Yeah, I don't sense like our base is really fired up about this.
No, they're not. They're not. But I mean, I think the problem is that you and I both know if there's a certain number of stories going on in the world, we'll know what conservative media is going to focus on. And a lot of that is just a handicap because of the low IQ. They're incapable of focusing on certain things. So it's going to be this sort of thing is going to constantly generate it. And then for better, for worse, sometimes it has its assets. I think the Trump administration is very sensitive to what conservative Twitter is focused on.
All right. I thought yesterday, in terms of forging a coalition and maturing as a movement, from going from an outlier movement that 4 or 5 years ago, even guys like you and I, who have had no issues with going after the conventional wisdom on our own side, looked at as kind of a nutty group, the Maha. They're now known as the Maha people. And they're now a real political force. They clearly provided some level of expansion of Trump's base that played some role in giving him victory this time, especially in the popular vote. I think that's pretty clear. To what extent, I don't know, but to some extent they did. And so with Susan, the appointment of Susan Menares yesterday, and I never thought for a second that we're going to get rid of Dave Weldon because he couldn't pass. We're going to replace him with Joe Ladapo. You and I both know you don't ever go more based and more right wing when you couldn't get an appointee pass. That just doesn't. I don't care if the last name's Reagan, Trump. That just isn't how it works. But there was, I think, a lot of rightful condemnation for this choice. One of the things that bothered me about it is even if you're trying to just put together a hodgepodge of views and play them off each other to give it the best possible spin you could, fine. Could you at least pick somebody that's loyal to us? Why someone that worked in the Biden and Obama administration, so at least they're loyal to us on some level, right? So if you're going to say, hey, I'm going to put all these views on public health in a room, play them off each other, and the best answer comes out, even if that's what you're trying to do, then pick people who are loyal to us. It's not like there's not we're not replete with people on the right still who share our views on many other things, but also are still very pro-vaccine, pro-big pharma, so it gets at least somebody that's part of our coalition. Well, yesterday afternoon, RFK Jr. came out, really shut a lot of this down. He personally vouched for her, said that he is the one who suggested her. And I made the point at the top of the show that what you're witnessing here is a transference, a redistribution of political capital. He essentially co-signed for this loan, okay? And if the person you co-signed for can't make the payments, Daniel, they come after you. He's 72, and he has a lot of rightful credibility in this space. He was here decades before people like you and I even knew it really existed, okay? But there's also a lot of other people that are younger, building brands and platforms that want to replace him, that didn't like this pick. If she doesn't come through, they're all going to turn on him. And so I find this and this is the moment every political movement comes into this. At some point when you go mainstream, you have to make a calculation of when do we take one for the team. He's decided that this is the place where he's going to do it. I will be and it did quiet down the criticisms, but if she doesn't deliver, he's going to be the one critiqued next.
No, I agree with you. I mean, because as I've been warning the last couple of weeks, as time goes on, if you notice, we're seeing positive signals in a lot of different areas, but the one thing that seems to be a no-fly zone is vaccines. Mm-hmm. And we're talking a lot about food. The West Virginia governor is having an event with RFK about food with food stamps being used for bad food and dyes in the food. I'm actually having the West Virginia governor on my show tomorrow. This is all good stuff, but there's a gaping hole there. There's a gaping hole, and Dr. J. Marty Macri, they're great, but they were more into the lockdowns, not so much with the vaccines. That's the one thing we're kind of skirting around. I also agree with your assessment that what shocked a lot of us is that we expected, per the CBS report before the pick, that they were looking at Ladapo and they were looking at Michael Burgess, who's a doctor, who was a former Texas congressman. Already he's a Republican. He was someone we didn't want, but he'd be loyal to Trump. This woman is like straight out of central casting of the confluence of AI, transhumanism, and the biomedical security state at DARPA, ARPA-H. So, wow. I mean, that is a big deal. I'm just going to tell you, it's going to become apparent. You can't miss it. If this is just kind of putting your ducks in a row versus I am completely moving away from the vaccine issue altogether, including, frankly, the mRNA, which is a supermajority issue at this point, and just focusing on maybe some of the other health-oriented issues, we'll know that very soon.
Mm-hmm. It's a fascinating team. I don't know that I can ever recall a public policy team like what Trump has assembled here. And in many respects, it is what I was calling for in the early days of lockdowns, which was we have all these noted figures from major universities, Harvey Risch, Tony Katz at Yale, for example, John Ioannidis, Jay Bhattacharya at Stanford, for example. These are places, frankly, I couldn't, and most of our audiences could not get admitted to these universities. Okay, so these aren't just a bunch of people from Hillsdale and Liberty. Not that there's anything wrong with that. My wife's a Liberty grad, but you know what I'm saying? They're not from our enclaves of resistance. They're within the same academic circles as Fauci, Birx, and all the rest of these people. Put them all in a room, put it on C-SPAN so there's no commercial breaks, and let's watch them go back and forth at each other and hash it out, right? In some respects, it's kind of feels like that's, in a way, what's going to happen here. And I will be fascinated to see how it works, because they're not just in advisory roles. I mean, Jay Bhattacharya oversees the agency, Daniel, that may give out more grants than any other singular agency does. Marty McCarty now oversees the agency that may oversee more licensing than any other federal agency does. Okay. On the other hand, the woman that's going to be making a lot of the guidelines for treatments is the one you and I were just complaining about. Okay. I am going to be fascinated to see how these various elements, and then over the top of all of this, as essentially he is the chief of this tribe. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sits at the in the chieftain seat over the top of all of this, and it'll be his primary duty to manage this kind of eclectic managerial structure. It will be fascinating to see how it plays out.
I mean, there's two things that I think that are important at play here. Number one is it's always a risk trying to say, I'm going to get a guy with their pedigree that is sort of coming or sees some of our way of thinking to varying degrees. There's certainly an advantage to that, as you noted, but a lot of those people are subversive and part of a limited hangout. They know that the game is up. They know that you have to concede certain things, and they could be instrumental in jujitsuing our natural momentum into oblivion. Mm-hmm. Kind of like we could go for the kill shot on the, tranny stuff, and even, take back ground on the homosexual agenda. And it's like, okay, only female sports, done. So we don't want the only female sports equivalent of the biomedical security state. So that's going to be the big test with the CDC official. Is she someone that's totally come to our way of thinking, and that's why he's vouching for her? Or he wanted a certain pedigree, but she's being subversive? We'll find that out. The other thing is about RFK himself. And I've noted this throughout all areas of policy. I think too many people don't understand. They think the swamp is something with like horns out of their heads, and you just come there and, oppose it. They have prima facie, surface level, very strong arguments for everything they say. We think everything's like men and female sports. You know what I mean? Like, you just come there. You don't have to be smart about it. Mm-hmm. And then, so we come with this populist rhetoric, and then 3 seconds later, we're in doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. I am literally dealing with this with people who have listened to my show and gotten to office, mainly at state level. The number of people that are able to get into the hot seat and actually understand why it is everyone else failed and punch through it, there are almost none. Mm-hmm. So like the Ron DeSantis thing, he makes it look easy, but it's not. So, RFK on the surface has been doing this longer than DeSantis as it relates to things like vaccines. But he was head of an NGO. Okay, I'm very interested to see, now that he's in the hot seat, could he do this? It reminds me of one other thing in Israel. For years, everyone's like, you freaking get in there and you give up all the land to the Arabs. You got to stop doing this. And then one after another, they would elect someone who on paper was more right wing. They get in there and they keep doing it. Right. And I mean, this is the lesson. It is very hard to govern to the right against the system. It's easy to talk about it. So I'm curious if RFK, like, oh my gosh, he's the most anti-vaccine guy ever. I'm curious if that's going to play out once he's in the hot seat.
Great points. Good to see you, brother. Thank you.
Take care.
You bet. Gentlemen, your thoughts as we close this out. 90-second warning.
That last point is so important. I've been trying to say it in my own way. Just remember that most Republicans, instead of thinking like we do on this show and Daniel thinks, I actually still think that the COVID jab was worth a shot.
Yes.
And probably saved millions of lives. And yes, even though it had some problems now, we still had to do this. Is Big Pharma is a gigantic evil monster. The thought of people just coming in here and taking it down instantaneously is utter folly. That's why I'm not getting bent over shape about this one particular woman, even with all the perfect choices. Look at what people believe. That's why they're playing this measles fiddle in Texas. They know it works on you.
Yeah, this is why I talk about how, police officers have impossible jobs. They are, basically the cartilage in the knee between some form of order and absolute chaos. And so I have, I have some great affection for just the ability or willingness to try to do that job, because it is an impossible job. And I'm very orange right now, and I'm not sure why. But President Trump, I don't know. I'm like a freaking Oompa Loompa.
Honestly, it's an upgrade. You look good. The coloring's good.
Donald Trump has a similar, this is an impossible job. He's trying his best to manage this coalition government, but it is, there are so many different factions here that he's trying to keep happy. So again, keep that in mind in your analysis.
Amen. We're going to stick around and finish Buy, Sell, or Hold in the overtime for subscribers. For the rest of you, we will see you mañana. Until then, Romans 8:28.